You're on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our panel tonight, speaking with some of the filmmakers whose content is showing at the OutSouth Queer Film Festival this year. We're very honored to have some of the filmmakers involved in the Extinction of Fireflies. My name is Dustin Britt. I am going to be your moderator tonight. I'm on the jury of the OutSouth Queer Film Festival, and I teach writing, and I'm somewhat of a film nerd, so I was very excited to speak with the folks that we've got on today. We have James Andrew Walsh, who is our director and writer, Kimberly Chesser, who is our producer, and we also have Cario Marcel, who is an actor in the film. Both he and his torso feature prominently in the film. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to start off by asking James, give us a sort of, for those who may not have watched it yet, which everyone needs to go do very, very soon, give us a little bit of a summary of what the film's about.
I think the film is about what happens when four characters who work in the theater, which has happened to me many times, plan a weekend around the reading of someone's new play or listening to the music from their new musical. And it's sort of an event that often brings together people who don't know each other, whose connection is through the person who's created either the play or the musical or whatever. And so it's really about theater people meeting for the weekend who don't know each other to read the work of someone who is their mutual connection or friend. And invariably, those kinds of weekends are, you know, not what they're cracked up to be. So this is sort of part farce. It's the farce and humor and tragedy of a weekend like this. What comes out of it when a bunch of people who don't know each other are dedicated to giving feedback to someone on something, a world and characters they've created. So it's the title, The Extinction of Fireflies, is the actual title of the play that they've come to read, written by the lead character, James. And he's written a very long play based in part on his research, love affair, and enthusiasm for the relationship between Emperor Hadrian of the 2nd century and his epic love affair with Antinous, who was from Bithynia, Turkey, or Egypt. Turkey. And so it's what happens when characters who don't know each other are joined together to read something they've never read together, and what happens.
Yes, all of that. I'm also a theater person myself, so I've been in similar situations. I've not had anyone as grand in my living room as Tracy Bennett. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But to me, as a queer theater goer, Tracy Bennett is, of course, a living goddess. And Cario, tell me about your role in this story.
So I play the role. Can you hear me okay? Sorry, great.
Yes,
I'm
I
just
can.
Keep going. Cool. I play the role of Callisto, who he comes he in a way invites himself because he has heard of James the playwright, and he is the boyfriend of Jay, a young actor played by the amazing Michael Urie. And so he comes along because he has kind of through Jay has read this play and gotten to know a little bit about who James is, and has this incredible curiosity. So he tags along where no one besides Jay really knows him. So kind of like what director James was saying. No one really knows him. We hear a lot about him before we see him, which I always find really exciting, because then you're kind of confronted. You have all these expectations or assumptions, and then you're confronted with the reality of who this human being actually is. And so he comes, and he's kind of throws a wrench in things and kind of throws everybody in for a loop, including himself, through this play.
What's so interesting is that, of course, you're introduced from behind in this really wonderful, sneaky shot. And it's like, who is this very tan man? And then Tracy Bennett lets us know exactly who this tan man is and why he's going to be important for us.
Yeah,
Kimberly,
it was.
Oh, go
that
ahead.
was such a. No, I was just going to say, I was like, I distinctly remember, you know, how much time James put into and thought put into that initial introduction shot. I mean, I feel like that I don't know how long in terms of hours we kind of did kind of planning that out, or where that inception is. I'm sure he could speak more to that, but I do remember that whole, like, it almost felt like an entire day kind of designed for that introduction at that time.
What's great, and what this is actually leading into my next question, is that's an opportunity you don't have on stage to give that kind of perspective, like he's there or he's not. So this is probably kind of a James Kimberly question. How does a trilogy of plays get its second play turned into a film? How do we get from there to here?
Kimberly, no, that's a good question, actually. It is a good question. I'll answer part of that. You know, the connection, you don't know you're writing a trilogy of plays until you're writing a trilogy of plays, right? So several years ago, I wrote a play called Jimmy and Carolyn, which was produced in New York. And you know, it was sort of a, you know, people loved it. We did very well with it. And then I decided to write this other play, The Extinction of Fireflies. And the smartest person I know about theater, a man named Andrew Boyd, whom you know, said to me, you know, The Extinction of Fireflies feels like the sequel to Jimmy and Carolyn. And I thought, well, it is kind of the sequel. In Jimmy and Carolyn, which is the prequel to The Extinction of Fireflies, which we are actually filming in October with a fabulous cast, it's the world before William leaves. So The Extinction of Fireflies is this kind of strange world without William, who was James's partner of 20 years. So we kind of backed into a trilogy, which sounds bizarre, but that's kind of what happened. And Kimberly knows both plays. And when I said to her, you know, let's do this as a trilogy, we suddenly, you know, we found kind of the DNA of the series in the second movie, because all three movies will be filmed in the same set, same location, just different characters. So it was sort of organically came out of the exploration of The Extinction of Fireflies as a movie. It wasn't planned as such, but because they work together well, that's how we're going with it now. And Drew Droege will be back to play James in the first movie, with a fabulous cast. I wish I could tell you the other names, but I shouldn't even say Drew, but the other names are so exciting. We're very lucky that our material attracts the kind of caliber of talent that it does. And as a matter of fact, Cario, one of the big questions last night was about you. Where did Cario Marcel come from? Who is this Cario Marcel? We were just in Outfest here in Los Angeles. That's why we're here. And that was the question. And we got to tell the whole story about how we met you, Cario. But to answer your question, Kimberly and I have known each other for 20 years. We love working together. And how does that relate to the trilogy? Well, I think Kimberly's excitement for both of these plays and the experience doing The Extinction of Fireflies and our working together feels like a natural transition.
Well, and also to James's credit, we come from the world of theater, and the theater was shut down. And James was like, what happens? You know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We don't know when we'll be able to see the stage again. How do we create a feeling of theater, a theatrical experience in celluloid? So he, you know, it's a credit to James and his vision to kind of have the idea of how do we create this play within a play on film. And that's kind of the genesis of the whole project.
So in terms of coming from theater, I know, Cario, you're a Tisch kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you a Tisch kid? I know you've done a lot of TV, lots and lots and lots of TV. Your IMDb is scroll. Broad City in particular is such a cool credit to have. How does your work in theater and your work in TV inform your work in this film?
I mean, I'm constantly kind of looking at, like, in many ways, I find that it's actually not that different, and in other ways, you know, you're surprised at how really different it can be. And I think that, like, for one thing, the thing I love about this project in particular was James gave us a rehearsal as if it was a play. And not only that, the way we shot it and kind of was very long scenes, like long takes of sometimes the full scene, like a play. So in those ways, it was very familiar to kind of being on stage. It almost felt like this just like very immersive theater thing. It was, on top of that, then the cast was living in a house together, which, you know, happens with a lot of like regional theater gigs. And so there was all of these very similarities that were fantastic. And but I would say the biggest thing was the luxury of the rehearsal process before, which I think was such a gift and so important to so many things. One, just like delving into the meat and who these characters are, what their relationships are with each other, kind of these histories, knowing that we actually have, for some of these characters, histories that has been written in the form of, you know, other plays. And so the source material of the memoirs of James, what's the name of the book? Memoirs of Hadrian, which is, I found, incredibly helpful in the rehearsal of the play, the reading of the play within the film. I think that would be the biggest thing, is like, and the other thing is that it created such, I think, a trust among all of us. We were such a small group of people committed and excited to do this project during a time when there was so much uncertainty. And we were so grateful to, I think, collectively be working on something, to be working, one, and then to be working on something so kind of meaty. It was, and it felt very, I don't know, it was very juicy to kind of be able to sink my teeth into that and like be in this location with these people. It felt very singular and very kind of like all of these things kind of lining up in a way that made it really special. You know?
You've all mentioned the house, which is now my dream house. I believe this is your house. Is that right, James?
It is my house. And I will tell you, last night, we had our screening yesterday at Outfest. And I don't know if you're familiar with Los Angeles, but we did a little after party at Revolver, which is in West Hollywood, which is a video bar. It's a full-on bar where they have video screens everywhere. And they have video screens above the urinals. So I gave them a promo for the movie, which they were playing on loop everywhere in this bar. And so it really is something when you see your living room and kitchen on a tiny screen above a urinal in West Hollywood. In the basement.
Never peed in your kitchen until now.
I feel like I've really arrived. I mean, I really feel like I've arrived. And it's interesting. I jumped in before you asked a question. I'm curious what your question is, or you just want me to talk about.
Oh, well, my essentially question was what are the pros and cons of shooting in your own house? And then also, I did not realize that the cast were all living there. So it sounds like there's a reality show here that I would love to have seen.
Well, in reality, they lived in a house that's much nicer than mine, actually.
Is such a thing possible?
Oh, Dustin, that's so sweet of you. I like you.
Your house is gorgeous. I'm like, I want to be in this movie.
Of all the press we've done, this is the best. No. They lived in a kind of they lived in an old house from the 20s, completely made of stone, that's called Valhalla. It's a very romanticized Viking pile of rocks that's absolutely beautiful. And I think
has a suit of armor.
Has suits of, I think they all
suits of armor. Yeah.
I think they all pooped when they showed up at the housing. They were like, "What?" It was really something. So, what are the pros and cons of shooting in your own house? The pro is you can roll out of bed and you're on the set. I am very good with sort of the sanctity of boundaries when it comes to working with actors. I think actors like boundaries. I like boundaries. So the set the house really wasn't a hangout place. It was our working set. So where we shot the movie, even during rehearsals, I made sure that I allowed it to be theirs. I allowed them, I decluttered it a bit. And then when we dressed it for the movie, of course, I waited till the last minute so they didn't really see what it was going to look like, but we redressed it slightly. So my house doesn't exactly look like that in terms of some of the decor. The cons of filming in your own house is when you then do a trilogy that's also going to be shot there, you first of all can't necessarily source the same things that you used in the set decoration. And our production designer is a woman named Kristen Vallow. If you look her up, you'll see some extraordinary credit she has. We're very lucky to have her. And so the con is that we can't redress it exactly the same way for the first movie that we're about to, the next movie we're about to film. But the pro is it forces you to think of the set, your own home, in an abstract way. So when I see the house in the movie, in the promo, above the urinal at Revolver, I see it in a kind of abstract context. It's bizarre. So I would say the pros far outweigh the cons in terms of work, the process, your imagination, how you think of place, how place is not a literal thing. So yeah, I mean, what were the cons for you, Kimberly? Having to watch the dailies in the toilet?
Yeah, sitting in the laundry room watching the dailies that was fun. But it was kind of great, literally, to roll out of bed and walk down the stairs and you're at work. You're like, oh, okay, 7 o'clock. I guess I'm working today.
Which during the pandemic is like, kind of a busman's holiday, maybe
right.
Something like that. I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, for those who haven't seen the movie yet, and I'm going to say yet because people go watch this thing. This thing is, it turns from extremely wonderfully sharp, catty, just real good Golden Girls bitchiness, and turn to kind of this Edward Albee family drama. And it's kind of got this perfect balance of like, we go from Boys in the Band to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I kind of love that. It's very unexpected.
Thank you.
Do you travel?
I know, really. Would you like a job?
No, I would love to travel. I'm actually performing in North Carolina right now. So sadly.
What are you doing, may I ask?
Yeah, I'm playing Laertes right now. So I've got too many words in my head to try to.
Where in North Carolina?
So it's in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I'm out of Raleigh, Durham. But yeah,
I'm going there on Wednesday.
It's a drunken Hamlet called Hamlet.
I realize.
So yeah, that's where my brain is right now.
That's amazing.
Speaking of drinking and your house, for those who haven't seen it, there's this gorgeous garden in the backyard, and some great moments between the characters happen out there. Obviously, shooting outside is particularly challenging. And during COVID, people are inside. Outside is kind of this weird universe of being trapped. What were the challenges of shooting outdoors in particular?
Lawnmowers.
We all have to, there's and then there's the neighbor moment, which that was the first that comes to my mind. James, you have to tell that because you remember it far better than I do. So you're the one that had to run over.
So we live in a community that is on the ocean. It's called Shelter Harbor. It's a very lovely, lovely community. And
beautiful shots of that beach in the film.
Thank you, Dustin. Anyway, my next door neighbor happens to be a very loud woman. Her husband is also loud. They're loud. And they love to get looped and be very loud. And they are fabulous. I love them. They're not fighting. But she's very loud and she screams. And so, of course, they chose to have cocktail hour during this filming, the night when we were filming Drew and Cario outside in that very touching, sweet, long take of a scene that right? And everything was perfect that night. Remember, Cario? And then all of a sudden you could hear her, but she was just enough in the background that it was like, what's happening? So anyway, we were running through the bushes. Kimberly took the car out and I finally found her and I was like, Kathy, could you please keep it down? I'm so sorry. And she was, of course, mortified because she didn't realize how, you know, it was a summer night. She didn't realize how mortified she was. But then I found out later on the beach that she and her husband then snuck in the bushes. And because all they could see were the two of them naked from the chest up, they thought we were filming pornography. And so a little bit of a rumorette spread in the village or in my community that I was filming pornography.
All press is good press.
All press is good press. Howard Rosenman was one of the first people I worked for, and he always said, the only thing worse than a bad reputation is no reputation. And I thought, that's a pretty good one. So that didn't work for me, but tried it. No. But anyway, that, you know, lawnmowers, noise. But I have to say, we worked with an expert sound guy, Iron Strauss, expert. He does lots of network television. And, you know, he was mortified. Remember that last day? He was mortified because he didn't think some of the sound was good. And then we listened to it and was like, what are you talking about? And what's really exciting, speaking of sound, is that we then had it mastered, mixed out here with someone I know at Transported Audio. And then yesterday, and he did a full 5.1 surround, right? And so I've only seen and heard this movie on the computer. Well, we had a DCP made and we showed it yesterday at OutFest. And on the big screen, the sound, oh my God, the sound, the nuance of the sound. And interestingly enough, Kathy, who we tried to get rid of as much as possible, you don't hear her at all. Mm-hmm. It's so bizarre, right? So I would say that it's one of those things where the garden, filming outside, you've always got to be ready to see that an obstacle or a curveball is actually an opportunity in disguise. I know that sounds Pollyanna, but I think it is true. I mean, did you experience that, Cario, when you were there? The kind of to Dustin's point about, sorry, not.
I mean, I'm not skilled enough to know about the technical aspects of some of the obstacles that we went into, but I mean, just being outside with the crickets and the frogs in the little fountain and the, you know, the wind in the trees and distantly being able to hear the ocean. I mean, like all of that informs the scene, informs especially that scene where it's, I mean, the whole thing is about this, that, you know, it does so much of your job for you when you're literally, it's like the best, you know, sound mix you could possibly have in that. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So speaking of people hiding in the bushes while watching Cario and Drew, Cario, what's it like? There's a level of vulnerability having to be, you know, essentially in your underwear for a large majority of shooting and to be on screen with so much of your body showing. So not only the emotional vulnerability that you have to give, but that physical vulnerability. Is that something that comes easily to you?
No, not at all. I think.
How do you really feel, Cario? How do you really feel?
Not at all. No, and that, I would say, like, if anything, that was probably the thing that drew me to Callisto, and the thing that I was probably most scared about Callisto, which was the thing that drew me to Callisto, which is that that it is so free for him, and so especially I think when he finds himself in this fantasy world, for lack of a better word, and he's just like, he needs, like, his way of dealing with it is to kind of like completely with abandon, just like dive into it in every capacity, physically, sensorially, intellectually, emotionally, and so I mean, it makes sense for him to be that kind of like open and free in ways that I'm not. But I think, again, having it's a small, intimate set. I intimately know everyone except for maybe the few people that were in the bushes watching, but I didn't know they were in the bushes watching, so that's probably for the best. But like everyone that was there, it was like had been there. We developed relationships. It wasn't, and I think that's kind of the key, is because what it comes down to is trust, and trusting my scene partners, trusting the director and everyone involved. And I think we, through having that time beforehand with each other, we established that it's, and for me, it's like, intellectually, I have no problem with it if it's in service of the story. And in this case, I feel like it really did, and was really important to kind of, one, juxtapose Drew's character James and where he is, and kind of really kind of show a lot of those insecurities that James has through this young man that has none of them. So yeah, it was really kind of freeing by the end of it, and fun, and like very exciting to do. And then especially having doing it in that long form, I found helpful, because then you have kind of this momentum throughout the thing, and pretty soon it's like, oh, it's actually not about, like, I forget that I'm not really wearing much, and it's just kind of, there's other things that are far more important in the person across from me.
I think there's a bad tendency in gay film to need to throw in some eye candy. And what makes this feel not like that is that even though the character of Charlotte objectifies you, the camera does not objectify you. And I think that's the big difference, is we don't have scenes of rippling biceps, and like there's not this objectification of you by the camera. I think that's what allows us to still see the vulnerability in your character and not think of you as some kind of Greek god. The comparisons are strong with this, of course.
That's so.
I think that was really intentional on James' part. Sorry, go ahead. I'm not going to speak for you.
It was when we Kimberly, did you see the cat?
I did see the cat. I'm very I love black cats.
What's your cat's name?
This is Lieutenant Ellen Ripley of the Nostromo.
From Aliens.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Kimberly is constantly doing this thing to me. It cracks me up.
This is a Sigourney Weaver themed cat.
Oh, okay. Kimberly is constantly doing this thing to me now that we're in LA. She's more LA than she realized. You know, the guy that was married to the man that was in the movie about the thing. And I'm like, what are you talking
He's like, but I have to stop the car.
And
what?
somehow I know the answer, you know, particularly if I've had like half a gummy, I get it like that. But anyway, I was going to say, Dustin, that I think you're making a remarkable point. And it was something that was important to Kimberly and I in the casting. We saw several guys who would have come and done the gun show for us, and happily done the gun show. And it was very clear to me from the beginning that that's not what that character should be at all. Because even if you go and look at the sculpture at the Met, I'm obsessed with the Roman wing at the Met. The portrayal of Antinous by the Romans was a softer look, you know, and Cario has that, looks like one of those sculptures in terms of how the artists represented these, you know, that image. It's interesting because last night in the discussion about you, Cario, you know, a lot of gay men in the audience, you know, I talked about how it was important to me that the character was not sexualized. The attraction that I want an older audience, an older man to have for that character is not in his pants. And I have to say, it was very gratifying to look out in the audience and see all of these people like relieved, like shaking their head, like, thank you for that, you know, because to your point, you know, so many of the characters now, Drew was always talking about this, gay characters in movies and film, and even in theater, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but The Inheritance, it's this kind of whitewashed version of being gay. And you know, I wanted to portray the relationship that I think men have that's at the core of homosexuality and get beyond the, like, you know, all of the ways in which men are portrayed, gay men. And I have to say, Cario took the direction, understood that. He understood why I told him, you know, it's one of those weekends where someone shows up and they take someone else's clothes, and the next thing you know, they're wearing it the whole time. When he takes, what's her face's shawl, the blue one, and then he never takes it off, right? I wanted that kind of You know, when he's having that scene with her in the garden, I positioned it a specific way so that it actually looks like the bust at the Metropolitan of Antinous. So I don't know whether that signaled to you, Cario, that this was not all about the sexuality. And so that when it did, and I also think we bury it even more in the moment when James has to take off his shirt, the way you playfully handle all that. So I'm just going to say about Cario, Cario's going to do very well in the business, because I hate when the actors, directors say he takes direction well. He takes what you give him and turns it into something. It's like, oh, okay, wow, okay, thank you for being able to put into your performance those horrible suggestions and no, you know, you're really a master at that. That's an artistic achievement, I think. I know.
Oh, so, thank you.
So I'd like to jump and talk a little bit about writing. I keep wanting to call it the play, because let's get real. It sounds like a play. It feels like a play. Because it is. It's wonderfully smart. And it does not talk down to its audience. And I think gay film can tend to talk down to its audience. There is so the character of James is writing this piece that feels very Greco-Roman. It's a man's attempt to channel, you know, Euripides. Do you like James's play?
Do I like James's play?
Yeah, you're writing through this character's voice. Are you taking the piss, or do you really like?
I don't think James's play is very good. I don't think it's very good. You know, I think that James, you have to write a bad play before you can write a good play. Okay, I've written several bad plays. You don't know you've written a good play until you write a bad play. James's desire to write that play is all the best intentions. He's very moved by the relationship between Hadrian and Antinous. He understands it. But it's the process of writing that play where he's able to write whatever the next play is, and that will be the good play. He's learned something about the writing. It's sincere. The play is sincere. It's not that the writing is bad. It's just, it's a harder play than he's ready to write right now. You know, it's why she says this Russian novel of a play. It's like, a play should not be a Russian novel, you know? So I hate to talk down my work, but I guess I'm not, though, right? No, okay. No, I don't think it's a very good play.
Well, and I had nothing to do with the writing, but my understanding was always the artistic idea that when you are trying to create something important, you often fail, right? I mean, as an artist, when you're trying to be a good actor, you often fail. But if you are just in it creating something, that's where the greatness often happens. But it's the parameters of I have to be great,
right,
that makes something not great.
And I just will add one other point to that. I think James, I mean, I think I'm happy with the movie, but the play that the character has written, I don't think it comes alive for him until the very end, and I don't want to spoil it. But the fact that Callisto's character pulls that one thread out, he got something. He got it. He got what James is trying to say. So that's all that matters at that point for James. That character got that one thing and pulled it out brilliantly. For James is a victory. So the play itself may not be a victory. It's a victory. James walks away from the experience victorious, and he will, the next play he writes will be a very good play.
And it's such a beautiful, stunning moment. Thanks primarily to Cario, who really seems to kind of undersell that moment in a way that it doesn't sound like he's reciting something from the play. It just feels very natural. And that's what, it took me a second to realize what the character's doing, because it just felt so natural.
Well, you should sit in an audience with a bunch of people in that moment. It's absolutely electric. I have to say, that's a kind of moment that when you're sitting at your screen is one thing, But when you're sitting in an audience and someone on the screen suddenly looks directly at you and says that line, it really works. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment, Cario. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really lovely. Even with the silliness that you're wearing, it is an incredible moment.
Can I say something about that silliness? Do you remember this, Cario? That outfit, while you're wearing that outfit, do you remember why?
Oh, I think I was just wearing it. Wasn't I like doing something and then you kind of...
After one of the rehearsals, we had a dinner and dinner in the backyard, and Cario showed up. He had the white kind of the blue thing around his head, and he had put the hat on backwards. There it is. And he put the hat on backwards, and I saw that and I was like, that's it. You know, because I wanted to destroy the classical imagery of it, right? And I thought that did it really well. He's just a guy who wears his hat on backwards. It's very easy to see him any way you want, but ultimately he's a dude who dropped out of Deerfield who wears his hat backwards. And this is an example to what you were saying earlier, Cario, about when you live and breathe and with someone in the theatrical way like we did, you can find things along the way that you put right into what you're doing because you realize they're coming out of something that's going on, you know, which is what you don't have on a typical movie set. There just isn't time. Right, Cario? I mean, when I saw him do that, I said to him, you need to, so I'll give you all the credit for that. You need to wear that in that final scene. That's the real magic, you know? And that's the, I would say when even Tracy Bennett, you know, it was her idea to be naked. It was not my idea. She was like, you think I should show me tits in this scene? I was like, yeah, sure. And we didn't tell anyone in the crew she was going to do that. I think Cario was, I think she saw the other nudity and she wanted to get in on the nudity thing. I mean, I can't explain it, but you know, if someone wants to be naked in your movie, I mean, I don't know. I think there's something that really gets an audience's attention when there's nudity. Right? You meet the character and within 10 minutes, she's taking off her clothes, right? And I know actresses, you know, of some name, they parade around completely naked in your house. I mean, with people there that they don't know. So that felt very, and it also said something to me about who she was, right? That's the kind of, there's something very star quality about a woman who takes off her top, you know, like that. It's very, seems, she's not of those characters. Does that make sense?
So let's talk casting. Michael Urie and Tracy Bennett were known to me because I was very familiar with Byron Seller and with Follies. So I was nerding out as soon as the opening credits come up. Cario and Drew were new to me. I'm glad to have discovered them. This might be a Kimberly question. Where did you manage to find these four wonderful people?
Well, Drew first, James and Drew had met in LA a couple of years ago. And Drew had read Jimmy and Carolyn, the first play, and he really liked it. Drew is this amazing actor who has created these wonderful characters out here in LA. He's doing lots of film work and lots of TV. And James said to me, I think this is James. And I was like, but I said this to Drew last night. I was like, I know you as Chloe Sevigny. He does Chloe Sevigny character that he's very famous for. And I was like, really? And James was like, this is for Drew. This is Drew. And Drew and Michael are very old friends. Michael has produced a couple of Drew's shows. He wrote Happy Birthday, Doug, and Bright Colors and Bold Patterns, both of which played New York. And we had Michael and Drew read together, and it was really electric. Like we got off that call and we were like, yeah, that's it. That's the deal. And Tracy, also James had known. I met at a wedding. I met Tracy at a wedding on top of the World Trade Center, the new World Trade Center. It was the first event there. It was a big wedding, and I met her, and I fell in love with her. I thought she was, you know, I'd seen her in End of the Rainbow on Broadway. I thought she was crazy, fabulous. And the part is originally based on someone else.
that I know in LA, who shall go nameless. And straight when I thought of an English actress, that's why I sent it to her. It was like, I don't know, I need someone who can deliver the, you know, the full tilt boogie, you know, the accent, the veneering, the whole thing. And I sent it to her, and, you know, she really loved it, you know, and she wanted to do it. And during the middle of the pandemic, she said, I'll do it. I'll get on a plane. I want to do this. And, you know, that means a lot to a writer, director, and to, a, you know, a producer, when someone that you really love is like, I'll do this, you know, and she made it happen. And so Drew and Michael kind of came together. And I knew Drew had it because I knew you had to cast someone. You said something that the writing was smart. Thank you very much. You have to cast a smart actor to land those jokes. Otherwise, you're never going to land those jokes. You can't explain why, you know, we were still using 2 tin cups and a string when that opportunity presented itself. You can't explain that joke to someone. You can't. They have to get it. You know, you have to get the kind of wry humor of it. And I also knew that Drew is holding on. I think he could be a great comic tragedian like a Nathan Lane. That's how I see him. You know, in the same way that Nathan Lane has this great career now as a tragedian. And last night it was very exciting for Drew because, you know, no one's ever seen him in a part like this. And at Outfest, it was really exciting. You could see people were like, wow. So, and I think that's kind of part of my job, right? And part of our job, Kimberly. Our job is to see unlikely people in the parts. The casting for Jimmy and Carolyn, which we're doing in October, there's 2 examples of that, right? I would say there are 2. People that are well-known and respected, but have never been seen in parts like this. So when you find actors like that who are eager to show that they can do something like this, and the writing is there, they'll do it, you know? And that's kind of part of the formula. And that's what we've done here as well. So.
And then with Choreo, we had a regular good old-fashioned Zoom audition where we saw a handful of actors for the role. And I told the story last night, Choreo, I hope you don't mind. But I said, you know, they all came with some semblance of, you know, they did the scene where Callisto has just come out of the ocean at the beginning of the titular scene of the movie. And, you know, everyone came with some form of, as we talked about earlier, some form of like beefcakey, like whatever. And Choreo came in wrapped in a towel. And it was so sweet and so touching that I had chill bumps. I was messaging James. James was messaging me. Like, we just knew the minute, like, he, like, chewed on the end of that towel, like, talking about, you know, the Fireflies and the, like, what, you know, it was amazing. It was just felt very, like, kismet.
Yeah, it's probably the cutest moment in the history of American cinema. It's like, it's the most adorable thing in the world. I was kind of dying.
Which moment?
It was pretty great.
When he talks about the nightingales? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the you know, the line about, you know who. I love that line. I mean, it brought the house down last night. I mean, that's really delivered that. But, you know, it's also, as I was saying earlier with Choreo, when actors come on board to play parts like that are written a certain way, where it's like, okay, I need to, like, have the guns out and I need to work out for 3 months before I get to say. There's a lot of assumptions an actor can make about what that part's supposed to be. And I love that Choreo showed up on the set exactly who we saw in the audition. He didn't second guess and think he had to be something else. He's smart enough to know he's a smart guy and the other thing is, it's also wonderful to work with someone like Choreo because you can shorthand things to him. We added lots of little touches and lines as we were filming this. That's the fun. For example, the Deerfield Academy, right? When I said to you, I want the audience to know that this kid is I don't want to say rich, but, you know, he's one of those kids. I went to an Ivy League school and I knew a lot of these kinds of kids. They were fuck ups, but they went to Deerfield and yet they dropped out to go be like, you know, masseuses, and, you know, they had their and not every actor you can shorthand and say, you went to Deerfield. And you got that immediately, right, Choreo? I mean, did you go to a prep school? You went to a prep school in Vermont, I think?
Nope. No. Oh, no. Public school all the way. But I think I lived not too far from Deerfield at one point. Okay. So I do know of it. Yeah.
So I guess my point is that those little nuances, you sometimes find them when you know, especially when you're working with an actor like Cario. It's like, what else can I give Cario? You know, what else? And when the actor does things, because we're just together the whole time. When the actor does things just as themselves that you notice, it's inspiring. I'm going to tell this story as well. Cario used to curl. Cario's a very tall guy. He's tall, but he used to curl up on the patio and find, like, you know, it was September, right? It was cold. It started getting colder, and he would find like a little square of sunlight, and he would curl up like a cat. And this person that was a giant suddenly became like a little cat. And it wasn't to get attention. It wasn't to be cute. I became fascinated by it. I still don't know why he did that, but I felt so madly in love with this person who liked to curl up. I mean, I know that sounds like insanity, but you spend enough time with actors in a situation like that, it affects the writing. You're inspired to give them things. And I don't think Deerfield Academy came out of the cat thing, but it's also part and parcel.
So, Cario, now that we've talked about you so much, like you're not here, now that we've bragged on you so much, I want to ask, so living with cast members is not common, and it's not since grad school, at least. Certainly not on a film set. How did living together, first of all, are there any just wonderful, funny stories? Secondly, did it inform your performance?
I think it's inevitable. It has to inform, in all the ways that James is saying, of creating a shorthand. I think it expedites the rehearsal process. I mean, we had the four of us, Tracy, Drew, Michael, and I. We had dinner together every night. We would just cook dinner together, and either if it was nice enough, we'd eat outside or around the table, and that meant sometimes doing scenes as we're eating dinner, kind of, and so it's like there's this life imitating art kind of thing going on. And the house was so beautiful. The grounds on it were so beautiful. I did have to go out on a kayak and go into the bay, and everything turned out fine, but it was I did have to go just kind of explore that area, because it was so amazing. The suit of armor probably scared me in the middle of the night as I was getting a glass of water or something like that 3 or 4 times, where it's just like this thing right there. Because my room was on this balcony between kind of Tracy's and Drew's. I don't know. At one point, I guess Tracy told me one night that or in the morning, I came down and I was like having some coffee, and she kind of said, like, she was giving me this look. She was kind of like, "How'd you sleep?" And I was like, "Great." Like, yeah, no, I mean, like, I left my windows open. It was good. She's like, oh, okay. You were screaming last night. And I was like, I apparently had some little night terror that I have no memory of. I hope that's not exactly funny, but I guess I would just scream, and she came and knocked on my door, and then I stopped. It was fine, but it was, I don't know if the house is haunted maybe, or there's some little creep. I have no idea, but I did have the night terrors at one point. Maybe it was just nerves or something, but yeah, that's it. Otherwise, no, I think just being able to be on the ocean for me is something that I can never undersell. It was just amazing. It was so great. I went out there swimming a couple times on my own, and it was really, really cool to kind of finish the summer in that environment.
So it's kind of a culminating question for each of you. What is your takeaway from this process?
I can't wait to do it again, which is why we're doing it in October. I think that partnerships are very important. Kimberly and I have formed a real partnership as a result of this. We're having a blast out here in Los Angeles. We've only seen each other on Zoom since we've wrapped. I think partnerships are important. Material is important. You have to believe in your material. You have to understand that there's a reason why and you have to find people who believe in it and not second guess it, and that you can't be afraid of the deltas, you know, all the uncertainties, because the uncertainties are where a lot of the excitement, you know, that part of the process is gearing up for all of the unknowns, right? You know, not knowing what it's actually going to be until, you know, you can only do so much storyboarding, you know, and we own a lot of the process, right? We think of the costumes and, you know, and I like the flexibility of that. So I guess my takeaway is embrace the uncertainty and the flexibility and partnerships.
I think my personal takeaway is something that I've told James numerous times, and I'll just tell everyone here. James has the great ability to kind of roll and bounce with drastic changes in the world, where my first inclination is kind of to roll in and hibernate for a second and hide. And, you know, when James introduced this idea of shooting during a pandemic to me, and executive producing my very first movie in a pandemic, I was terrified. And I kind of dug my heels in a little bit. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And I think the biggest takeaway from me is just do it. And I think that's for everyone. You know, the world is scary. It's a very scary place right now. And we're all just trying to get by. But don't let one door closing stop you from an opportunity for something that could be life-changing for you. I think that's my biggest takeaway from this.
Especially during the pandemic, which I knew immediately, this is not my first time at the paradigm change. You know, I've lived through several paradigm changes now. 9/11 was a paradigm change. AIDS was a paradigm change. Paradigm changes I find very exciting. And this has been a paradigm change. You know, and I recognized that early on. The gatekeepers for the material like a play didn't have their gatekeeping, you know. It was a paradigm shift. And I think the paradigm shifts offer exciting opportunities. So,
I mean, I echo all of that. I think, as with anything, trying to shift curiosity and joy to be kind of the true north of one's compass can only be a good thing. And usually if those are the kind of the guiding lights, then amazing, unexpected magic can happen. And I think along the lines of what has been said before, through kind of seeming obstacles can actually open your eyes to a much larger or much more exciting kind of sandbox to play in. So again, if you kind of have that curiosity to think of, and when James invites you over, I guess you go. There's the other big thing.
I'm using that joy.
Yes, and. Yes,
and exactly, I'm using that curiosity and joy line.
So we're here at the end of our time. I do want to ask, is there ever a plan to stage this?
Well, send it to all your theater friends. We would love to stage it.
Yes.
Are you kidding me? Yes, Tracy would love to do this as a stage play. So yes, Dustin, take it upon yourself to make that happen.
Okay, I will call you, and I do direct a little bit, so we'll see what we can do. A trilogy is never a bad idea.
Dustin. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would love to see that. I would absolutely love to see that. Yes.
Awesome. So I want to thank all of you so much for your time in our various time zones. James Andrew Walsh is the writer and director. Kimberly Chesser is the producer, and Karia Marcel is one of our primary actors of the quartet of wonderful humans that are in the Extinction of Fireflies, which you can still catch as part of the OutSouth Queer Film Festival, which runs through the 19th. Highly recommended. Take an hour and a half and do yourself a big favor and give it a watch. Grab a glass of wine. It can only help. So thank you all so much for your time, and I wish you all the best with making the continued rounds with the film.
Thank you. This has been really
Wonderful.
fabulous.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We are such a wonderful family. The OutSouth family is really terrific. I hope folks appreciate what a beautiful festival that you're doing, and all the people. And this Thank you, Dustin.
And please bring the next one back.
Oh, we will. Trust me, we will.
Definitely.
And then we can actually come there because I can't wait to wait to meet Jim Carl. I love a fellow chief cook and bottle washer, so I can't wait to meet him. He sounds like right on my.
He's a blessing.
You send him an email at 3 in the morning, thinking, "Oh, he'll get back to me like 3:45." He's the best. So we send. We're thrilled. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dustin.
Bye, Karia. Bye, everyone.
Bye.